Hi there, my name is Stephanie Dickson and I am from Green is the New Black. I'm normally based in Singapore, but right now I'm coming to you from sunny Australia. And today we are going to be talking about well-being and the environment. So we've basically got 7 years left in our carbon budget, which means if on the current trajectory that we're on right now. And once we hit that, we are going to be facing climate catastrophe. Now, there's a lot of places around the world that are already seeing huge effects of climate change, but there are a lot of places that aren't really noticing it or acknowledging it right now. And you may be wondering, how did we really get here? And I'm sure that a lot of you have heard some of these crazy stats before. And I'd actually love this session to be really interactive. So looking at these stats on the screen right now, if you know any of the answers to them, please write it in the comment box so we can get a little bit of engagement going on here. But we're talking about plastic in our oceans. Until which year are we going to have more than fish? What do you think one of the most polluting industries in the world is? How many straws do you reckon Singapore goes through in a single day? And how many companies are actually responsible for 71% of greenhouse gas emissions? So if you know some of those answers, pop them in the box. I'm going to now reveal the answers to you. So they say that from Ellen MacArthur Foundation that we're going to have more plastic in our ocean than fish by 2050. The fashion industry is one of the most polluting industries in the world. That's from Fashion Revolution. In Singapore, we go through over 2.2 million plastic straws a day, which is enough to cover our coastline, the entire of Singapore, twice over. And there are 100 companies responsible for 71% of global greenhouse gas emissions. So I'm sure you've heard some of these stats before or stats like this. So I'd love to hear, have you heard? Maybe you haven't. Write it in the chat. Let's hear like where we're kind of at as an audience today. And then I'd like to ask you who actually does something about it on a daily basis. Maybe you're thinking, I could do more. Maybe you're thinking, I'm already taking some green steps. And maybe you're already an eco warrior. So I speak to a lot of people with the work that I do. And there was one conversation that was very representative of a lot of the conversations that I had. I was speaking to a girl in Hong Kong, and she was really passionate about the plastic in the oceans problem. And she said she was sharing a lot of videos on her Facebook feed every day. She was speaking to her friends about it. She was very, very passionate. And I said, well, that's really great that you're using your sphere of influence. So what do you do about it on a daily basis? And she kind of looked at me and looked down and said, I live in Hong Kong and I really don't trust the water that comes out of the taps. So I drink water out of plastic water bottles, and it causes me so much pain every day that I have to do this. And it's a big problem. And I just feel like I'm a big hypocrite and I'm really struggling with it. So we came up with some solutions for her. But the point of the story is we see this so much. We're really passionate about saving the planet, or we're really mad about how much plastic's in the ocean, and yet we still get takeaway and we still drink from plastic water bottles. And there's this big disconnect, which can actually cause a lot of anxiety within people. So I'd love to ask, who's actually felt or is currently feeling eco anxiety? Maybe you're like, eco what? That's okay. I'll have an answer for you shortly. Or maybe you've definitely felt it before. Maybe you're feeling it right now. Maybe, if you've also had anxiety around using plastic, or if you've had anxiety around flying a plane, or on a deeper level, if there's a lot of people now that are so fearful of our future that they don't want to have kids. And then an even more extreme to that, there are people around the world who are already feeling and suffering from the effects of climate change, who are actually taking their own lives because they don't know what else to do. So here's a little bit more of a structured definition. Eco-anxiety is excessive worry, nervousness, sleeplessness, or panic attacks triggered by a number of factors associated with being environmentally aware. Now, on my side, I've had waves of eco-anxiety through my journey. And recently, I've actually been having a lot of nightmares about walking around in an apocalyptic world. I've had crazy dreams of floods and being in dirty water, and it can be a lot. And the Psychoanalytical Association actually said this is the biggest global health threat of the 21st century. And while there's not a medically accepted definition or even, acknowledgement yet of this, it is massively growing around the world, and you've maybe had a little taste of it yourself. So what we actually find is that people are often feeling quite paralyzed and don't actually know what to do or think it's too hard. So they kind of shut down. Or people acknowledge it, but they want to keep their standard of living and convenience in their life because we've got used to that. That's the status quo now, right? Or the other thing is brands who are doing things in a different way are really struggling to break through and find the correct consumers. But we always ask ourselves at Green is New Black, well, what if becoming sustainable was easier and more convenient than you think? And this is where we come down to taking action. And for us, it's all about little green steps. Now, we like to take big, complicated issues and break them down into little green steps. Because if we can move forward, if we can take small steps forward, we start to remove that anxiety, take back control. We're going to unpack this a little bit more shortly. So who am I? Well, I'm a girl that used to work in fashion. I worked in fashion and I ran festivals all around Asia. And it was really my dream job. I'd wanted to be in fashion my whole life. My life was a little bit like Devil Wears Prada, but I loved it. But then I realized and discovered and had a huge awakening that fashion was actually one of the most polluting industries in the world and one of the most socially corrupt. And I felt completely blindsided. Like, I literally couldn't believe that I'd been working in this industry and I didn't know what was going on behind the scenes. So, as any other naive 25-year-old, I quit my job and I was trying to figure out how I could learn about sustainability. So, I went to a lot of events, but I was faced with a lot of the stereotypes. They were either too preachy, too businessy, or way too hippie, which clearly didn't work for me. And so, I ended up just starting my own events. Those events led me to South Green is New Black, and there's a couple of cool things that we do. So we run conscious festivals where we bring together thousands of people and amazing brands and connect them up through talks, workshops, and a marketplace. We run that in Singapore, Hong Kong, and we were supposed to come to London in June. Obviously, COVID had made other plans for us, but we're coming to Paris in June 2021. So that's the big thing that we do. We also run a media platform where we talk about all types of sustainability issues, climate change, fashion, everything. Again, it's all about little green steps. We do some sustainability advisory as well. So that's a little bit about us. We really see ourselves at the intersection between people who want to be more conscious and brands that are being more sustainable, and we can connect them through the work we do. And these are just a couple of our key values, looking after the planet, looking into innovation, being transparent and clear, putting power back to the people, protecting animals and being pro animal life, and looking after our well-being. So a big thing that we talk about is consciousness or living more consciously. And when we're talking about that, it's really about understanding that our decisions not only impact us, but our surroundings and the environment as well. It's like a butterfly effect. What we do, it always has an impact, whether it's before we got it, what is the impact of it getting to us, or what's the impact of us using it, or what's the impact once we are done with it. All of this has an impact, and we need to understand that. We need to wake up to realize the part we are playing in all of this, because collectively we have a huge impact. Maybe you think as one person you can't do much or that your impact doesn't matter. My friend, it does. So this is why we talk about waking up. We talk about getting more conscious, not walking around with the blindfold on anymore, not walking around, being numb by consumerism and all of our preconditioning in society. We want to wake up. Now, there's this very interesting stages of the waking up syndrome, which was done by Dr. Edwards and Buzzle, that you can check it out. But I'll put it here because I think it's a fantastic cycle of what we go through. And I even go through it, as I've been working in sustainability, I learn more and more. And sometimes I still go through this process. So stage one is denial. We're like, nope, it's not relevant to me. I'm just one person. My impact doesn't even matter. Denial, denial, denial. Next, we move into semi-consciousness. We start realizing, or we start acknowledging maybe a little bit of the stats. We've heard that there's a lot of plastic in the ocean. Maybe we've been swimming in the beach and we've seen it before, those kind of things. Then we have a moment of realization, which was where I was at when I had my awakening moment like, whoa, there's a deep acceptance and realization that, okay, something's not right here, which leads you into the next point where you get to a point of no return. I could have continued, I could have ignored everything I learned and kept going and working in the fashion industry and maybe done something different. But I reached a point of no return where I was like, I do not want to be part of the problem. I want to be part of the solution. Maybe you've also had moments like this before. And then once you get on that new trajectory, you're not going to go backwards. Maybe you slip back and forth a few steps here and there, but you are on a new journey and a new path to dealing with that thing that has awoken you. Then you get to a point of no return. Maybe you're feeling like, okay, you're going to do something about it, but quite often we slip into despair and guilt and hopelessness and powerlessness, and that's where the eco anxiety hits us like a wave, and we can get stuck there for a long time. But once we have a deeper acceptance, once we get back our power and we take action, which is how we get back our power, then we start moving into a different level. It is a process, it is a journey. Doesn't matter where you are right now, as long as you keep moving forward, you're going to keep waking yourself up and you're going to be keep being part of the solution. So that's just a great little framework to remind yourself that it's okay no matter what level you're at, but let's move forward and let's keep going. So I really love this quote here by Guy Speth. It really just kind of, hits the nail on the head of kind of what we're dealing with here as well. So I'm just going to read it out to you. I used to think that the top environmental problems were biodiversity loss, ecosystem collapse, and climate change. I thought that 30 years of good science could address these problems. I was wrong. The top environmental problems are selfishness, greed, and apathy. And to deal with these, we need a cultural and spiritual transformation. It's so true. And I think this year has awoken more and more people to what we're truly facing. COVID is a speck of what we're going to be experiencing once the true effects of climate change start hitting us around the world, even more than they already are. We need to deal with this idea, these big concepts here, these listed out, and not fall into apathy. Apathy is so dangerous. We can't slip into that. We need to change the system. And we need to be able to identify the cracks in that system so that we can begin to change it. And one fantastic way that really gets us excited and inspired at Green is New Black is micro revolutions. I'm going to share a couple of examples of what I'm talking about here. So by now, I'm sure you know that animal agriculture and our industrial farming is one of the top polluters for greenhouse gas emissions, for water and soil degradation. There's so many issues that stem from us eating, and we're making decisions 3 times a day in our plates on on how the impact we're going to be having. So there's a couple of amazing companies who have come out and who are starting to address and challenge these and to literally change the system. So one is Oatly, and yes, I know there was a little bit of controversy about Oatly this year, but they are still on a great mission and they have changed the system. They did it so cleverly, and they went through baristas, they went through cafes to get their products into cafes as a plant-based option. They have amazing branding, and they want to give people milk that is actually designed for humans, not for cows, not for any other kind of milk that you would be drinking from an animal, but milk for humans. It's very, very clever, and they did it in a very clever, but again, subtle way, and they've led to a huge plant-based milk revolution. Another one that had a very similar strategy is Impossible Meat. When they came to Asia, they came in a big way and all through partnerships with chefs and restaurants. And what I love is the founder, he's actually on a mission to convert meat eaters. He does not design his product for plant-based consumers and vegetarians, although a lot of them really enjoy it. He wants to make a product so good that meat eaters go, you know what? I'm going to eat this instead. And I just think that's fantastic. Again, it's a micro revolution, but it's a huge thing because he is taking on a massive industry. Another one you might have heard of, fashion revolution. So there was a lady, two ladies, one who was sitting in a bath when the Rana factory collapse happened here, which killed the most people that any fashion disaster has ever killed, over 1,000 people in Bangladesh. And she was lying in her bath saying, we need a revolution. We need to revolutionize the fashion industry. So she came out with the fashion revolution, started it, and now they have chapters all around the world. They come up with a transparency index every single year with all the top brands like H&M and a lot of the luxury brands on there, coming out and showing people how transparent are they about their supply chain. Amazing. And a smaller example that still had a huge impact was one from Singapore. So Sandra, a good friend of ours, she was freezing in all of our buildings. We have a lot of aircon in Singapore. And so she decided that she wanted to increase the temperature of our aircons by 2 degrees because she found it so ironic that our aircons that are keeping us cool were actually melting or contributing to melting the North and South Pole, all the ice, which was then leading to more heat and needing us to put the air cons on. It was just this vicious cycle. And so she said, we have to do something about this in Singapore. So she did soft lobbying with the government, worked with some amazing people in Singapore, and within 1 year was able to was basically responsible for changing a law on our Green Buildings Act so that public spaces in buildings and malls and public spaces, basically, temperature had to be between 23 and 25 degrees. And she started this massive movement. This was just one girl that just, again, figured out like, this is ridiculous. And she went and she did something about it. So micro revolutions, stuff that we can do, lead to a lot of change, are going to massively help us. But other things, of course, is taking action as individuals. What little green steps can we do? And so here are a couple of them that I'm going to share with you. But before that, if you think that little green steps don't matter, I would massively encourage you to check out the Anatomy of Action by the UN. They came up with 5 key areas of how we can reduce our impact and things that collectively, when we do them, will lead to big change. Now, I've dissected some of them out that we at Green is New Black think are really important, but you can also go check this out by the UN. And we were so glad when we found it because we'd been talking about little green step for years, and people always question, like, do my individual actions matter? They came out, they've done a lot of research with a lot of scientists, checked out all the reports, and yes, it does. So what can you actually do? And hopefully this will help with your eco-anxiety as well. One is fly less and electrify your travel. This is a tricky one. I know that a lot of people love to travel. This year's been great for us because we've all been locked down in that sense and not being able to travel. But when you do, try to fly less, drive or take a train, take public transport. And next time you're purchasing a vehicle, make it electric. We have to start electrifying our cities and our transport a lot faster. Now, this is a big one. We have to move and green our money. Now, it's one that's becoming more and more discussed, but something that is really important. And that is our banks use the money that we have in our funds, maybe your retirement fund or your pension fund. They use that money to invest in projects to make more money. And a lot of the time, those projects are fossil fuels, or they are projects that are leading to the degradation of our planet. And so you need to question your bank and you need to find out what's your money being used for. Then you either need to tell them you don't want it to be used for that anymore and see if they have any green projects they can invest in instead, or you need to move your money. That is a big one. If we move the money, we change the whole equation. Renewable energy. A lot of you probably know about this already, but nowadays you can most likely in most developed countries around the world, you can switch your energy provider to one that's renewable, whether it's solar or wind or thermal, or have at least a mix so that part of your energy that's coming to your house is renewable. Or if you can get your own solar panels, that's even better. So renewable energy is something that we can very easily change. Become a climatarian. So you've probably heard of vegetarian, you've maybe heard of even pescatarian, you've probably heard of vegan, but there is a whole spectrum. And climatarians make decisions on their diet based on the impact on the climate and the impact of their carbon emissions. So there is something that you can look at. We can skip burgers, meat, a lot of the documentaries say that the biggest thing that we can do is stop eating beef and lamb. But then seafood's really important as well if you care about plastic in the ocean. I'm going to share a bit about that in a sec. And if, there's a spectrum, we're not telling everyone to be plant-based overnight, but you can transition and you can do different things. And if you haven't started at all, just try to be green on Mondays. Now, there were studies done, and 46% of the plastic in the Great Pacific Gyre was from fishing nets. They cause a huge amount of the plastic in the ocean. And a lot of people don't actually know this. Very, very easy to Google, find out a little bit of more information, but plastic is now found in all of these different things. It's in our air, it's in our breast milk, it's in drinking water, it's in salt, rain, and it's in fish. We have microplastics in all of these different places. In salt, up to 90% of sea salt, sorry, comes with microplastics in it. It's crazy. So if you care about the plastic in the ocean, you need to do your research as well and figure out where your seafood's coming from. Which leads us, of course, as much as possible, we need to say no to disposables and single-use item. The fact that we even say it's disposable is the biggest joke ever because plastic is not disposable. It is not single-use. So we need to keep massively say no to that. We also need to buy and shop local and seasonal. So make sure you pay attention to that. Lower carbon footprint when it's coming closer from you. Rethink your wardrobe, can you get secondhand? Can you rent? Can you share? What can you do with your clothes? That's a huge decision we can make as well. Borrow instead of buying. We don't always need to have something new. Maybe if it's just especially for things that aren't required on a daily or weekly basis, just think about sharing instead. A big thing, we got to vote, we got to write, we got to use our letters and use our voice to our politicians because they are there to represent us. So who are we putting in there? What are they representing? We can, contact your local members of parliament and make sure they are aware of what you want and, write letters. There's so many letter templates online that you can download as well. Tax yourself. You can very easily nowadays figure out what your carbon footprint is and offset it by planting trees or other amazing projects around the world. Speak up at work. There's a lot of different things you can do at work. You can start a green committee. You can do a little bit of research and help your office or your company make more sustainable choices. And you can rally some support internally and go and actually make that change happen. And that's going to have a huge impact if you think about it on a collective level. And of course, as wherever possible, repair your stuff, reuse it as much as possible. If you can't, then repurpose it into something else. And finally, recycle what can't be avoided. But that's a last resort. So now I'd love you to think, what little green step are you going to commit to today? Maybe there's something new that was brought up to you that you didn't know about before. Well, there's a great place to start. If you're looking for more resources, you can head to greenisnewblack.com. We do articles and guides. We have a YouTube channel where we talk about a lot of these big issues. We'd love to see you over there. And just a little reminder, small collective steps will change the world, and you can use your actions as a force for good. But remember, conscious living is a journey. It starts with you, but take it at your own pace. There is no rush. We're going to be on this journey for a long time. Thank you so much for listening. My name is Stephanie Dickson from Green is New Black, and I hope you continue to take little green steps.